There are three words in the title: young, tradition, and Vermont. The young people somewhere between birth and age 25. And then tradition, basically we're talking about things that have come from the past that somehow have a place in the present, and then laying the groundwork for some future development. It's sort of a living tradition. And then Vermont, of course, there's the Vermont, the geographic boundaries, the physical boundaries of Vermont. But when we talk about Vermont, its influence, where things came from that came to Vermont, where things go after they're in Vermont, the borders tend to disappear. And unless you're Abenaki, native centuries ago, and they probably even those folks were new to the area at some point. Everybody's a recent immigrant relative to long-term history. So it's not just about the somewhat artificial boundaries, the geographic boundaries of Vermont. It's about all the influences that come from and leave from Vermont. So that stretches all over the world, we've discovered. Trying to do four things in terms of programs and activities. We're trying to ensure that young people have a chance to be exposed and excited about the music and the dance and the playing. I want to make sure that they have chances to learn it and that they have a chance to perform it once they feel comfortable with something that they've learned and been inspired by, and then to use those that inspiration and that ability to support their communities and the people that they are around, and whether it's in their family or their neighbors or somebody they know at school. I noticed that there are opportunities in schools in particular for classical music, for jazz, some rock music. There's venues and recording opportunities to play all kinds of things. But it seemed like there was a gap with traditional music and dance. Young Tradition Vermont has been around officially since 2009. However, the organization consists of about 30 programs, some of which go back much longer than that. So of course we do concerts. We probably do 2 or 3 a month. We have a music camp coming up, we call it Trad Camp. A music session on the pediatric floor at the hospital. We have a Young Tradition Weekend. We're actually retitling that starting next year and calling it what it really is, Young Tradition Festival. So that happens, a variety of things happen within that. We have a contest, we have a showcase of teachers and their students, or mentors and mentees, or adults and their children playing, singing, dancing together. So those are a few of the things. We have a touring group that every year makes a trip somewhere. This past year we went to Scotland, the year before that to Cape Breton, the year before that to Ireland. A day wouldn't go by that there was not something going on that day, the day before, or the day after. So there's always something going on. They almost always have to do with volunteers. So the volunteers would probably number in the hundreds. But we have a board of directors. When we started a number of, almost 10 years ago, most of the board were folks who were parents of kids who were involved in the program, in one of the programs, or somehow had been involved in some of those other activities as adults. And then our incoming nominees for officers for next year are all former participants of programs. So not only are we trying to make sure that these activities are designed for young people, we're trying to make sure that they end up in charge as well.
I guess I wanted to get a view of more of what happens on the other side of that organization, because I was on the receiving end of everything, like, you know, getting suggestions for where to play gigs and all that, and I wanted to see more of what goes into running it and who makes the decisions and how things work.
Why traditional music? Almost everybody is involved in other things. So they're in rock bands, they're in the youth orchestra, they do ballroom dancing, they do they're physicians, they're teachers, they're students. So traditional music and dance isn't like, we're not on a crusade to make sure that's all anybody does. We're just suggesting that might be a good part or a good option for folks to be able to go to if they're interested in it. But I don't think you'd find anybody that wasn't interested in a bunch of other things as well. We try to make room for, just have our place in that grand quilt that we call life. Maybe I can just give you an example of how somebody might progress through everything. We go to a school and we meet somebody that comes in and interacts with the instruments, and they got a particular interest in, say, a banjo. And they see a banjo there and they try it out, and then they go, and then they come back and they try the banjo some more. And somebody shows them a few things they like to do with it. And it turns out that they would actually be interested in sort of having a banjo or trying it out, so we make arrangements to provide a free loan of that banjo for a period of time. And then we can provide support for some initial lessons with somebody to get further into it. If they're still interested in that, they could come to the music camp, learn a little bit more about the banjo, come to one of the fiddlehead sessions that we do in the violin shop, which isn't just violins, often is a majority of violins, but people come with banjos or mandolins or pianos or guitars. And so they get involved that way. And then they learn a few things that some other kids know, and we find a farmer's market or an event of some kind that they get to play music at, so they come and play those few tunes that they know, and they do that. And then they're taking further lessons. Maybe they go to a camp in Maine or something, and they get really into it. And then they try out for the touring group, and they go on tour. And then, by the way, these are all things that have happened, so I'm not just making this up. It has happened to a variety of people I could tell you about. They decide they're going to go to school. Maybe they're not going to do music school, but they use their experiences in these activities to write their college application. And they took a few music classes at school. And then maybe they decide they want a career in music, and maybe they go out and they write a few songs, and they might be Anna Roberts-Javalt or Aeneas Mitchell or Avi Soloway or some other folks who have been involved in Young Tradition Vermont in the past, and they go on and do a variety of things. And they might do that, or they might become a teacher or an attorney or a carpenter, and they make music part of their life in terms of doing that. So let's try to cover the sequence of stuff that folks have opportunities to step into or step out of. I like to think that what we do is akin to a wildlife sanctuary, that we're there. Some folks come in and they make a nest and they raise their young, and they take full advantage of it, and they catch fish and they make a whole life there. And others come in, they look around, they decide they're going to fly on somewhere else, and they do. But and then everything in between. So we're the trad music and dance wildlife refuge. To find out more information about what we do and to contact us, you can go to the website youngtraditionvermont.org, or you can go to the Facebook page, Young Tradition Vermont. And actually several of the programs have their own Facebook pages. You can find those programs on the website or on Facebook pages.